Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Nutritionist podcast. I'm Isla Garcia, master's degree of nutrition science and registered dietitian, and I'm going to make weight loss realistic, sustainable, and uncomplicated for your busy lifestyle. On this podcast, me and my team of registered dietitians will decipher the latest nutrition research, dissect fad diets, and discuss social media trends for you so you can feel confident knowing what to eat to achieve your health goals. Research suggests that most weight loss programs aren't successful, but my experience has taught me that this is not because the participants aren't committed. It's because those diets are designed by non-nutrition professionals and center around severe restrictions. We are here to provide the facts about the science of weight loss so you can have the success you want and continue living your best life. Welcome back to the Millennial Nutritionist podcast. It's Isla, your host, founder, and CEO of the Millennial Nutritionist. And today I have our coach Hannah on to help us talk about a topic that's going to be all about our millennial living theme for the month. Thank you so much for joining us, Hannah.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so we're in September, we're going to be covering Carbs 101, healthy carbs, which I think will be really good come the holidays because people tend to either not think about information anymore, or they get so nervous. And I just want to kind of normalize why it's important to eat carbs going into this season. But before we get into that, tell us, do you have any life dates on anything, any fun foods you've been trying, anything like that?
Yeah, so I've actually been traveling a lot this summer, so a lot of back and forth between North Carolina and Texas, but about to wrap all of that up and start the new school year.
Yeah, fun.
As far as food items I'm feeling right now, I've kind of been in a cooking rut and I've just not really felt like cooking a lot lately. I did stumble across this new cafe that has this like really good grilled chicken and like there's like cheese, candied walnut salad. And I've had that 3 times this month. And so, yeah, it's just really good. So I think that's
Yeah.
what I'm stuck on.
Do you feel like you could like recreate it at home or it's like not worth the effort or I feel like it would take like the magic out of it?
I feel like when other people make salad for you, it tastes like so much better. But I could probably buy like candied pecans or something and throw it on a salad. I think that's what makes it.
I feel like I realize salads taste good when you have like a bunch of different like components and textures and like temperatures instead of just like lettuce, baby carrots, and like
Yes.
you got to have like candied something, like roasted something, sun-dried something, and that's like a lot to keep.
Some sort of fruit.
Exactly. So it's too much and I can never get the dressing right. I feel
Yep.
like restaurants do way better with all of that. But cool. What have so recently there's Starbucks that opened up next to me. And I normally do pretty good with not going to Starbucks because there's nothing around me. And but I've like been going back and I was like, honestly, just to save money, I'm like, I just need to make these drinks at home. If I'm going to eat them, if I'm going to drink them, I'm drinking it anyway. So let me just like make the thing at home. Cause I honestly, I know I talk all about swaps. I don't like the lower calorie options. I'd rather like have black coffee like 4 days of the week and then get like a 300 calorie coffee. And that's what I would just rather do instead of like in between. So I had a bunch of heavy cream and I made my own, is it like vanilla sweet cream or something like that?
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not bad. Like it's heavy cream, vanilla simple syrup, which you make, and then like milk. So I don't know. It's kind of fun. I'm doing it to like use up all of my like heavy cream. I think it's like kind of high in calories, but making it at home, you can like pour less of it. I don't know how much they pour of it at Starbucks, but I can kind of wean myself off too. So saves money. I guess it's kind of low calorie. There's nothing super low calorie about it, but you can at least like control the portion size even by itself. So that's my little fun thing. And we'll probably put the recipe in Millennial Living or something since I mentioned it. But
Is that
that's
the one that they foam?
that you can foam it. I tried to
Oh,
foam it.
okay. I think
I
that's what I'm
have,
thinking.
yeah, I have an espresso like foamer. But so they make like vanilla sweet cream and then they can do it like sweet foam or something too.
Oh, that's what I think I'm thinking of. I haven't
Yeah.
tried it. I'm always afraid to like venture out at Starbucks and get
Oh,
the same thing every time, but I've definitely eyed it.
what is your go-to?
A plain, like no syrup, just a plain almond milk latte.
Oh my gosh. Dang, you're so hardcore.
It's like so dull.
Yeah, it's okay. That's fine. That's good.
And in
Yeah.
like the fall, I'll add like to my plain almond milk latte, like half of a pump of like pumpkin syrup, and that is the most I venture out.
Ooh, do you make coffee at home? Are you a coffee drinker or not?
I am, and I do like mostly make it at home just because it's the Starbucks near me is kind of out of my way, so I don't go very frequently. At home, I just do almond milk and coffee. So
Gotcha. Dang, you're so hardcore. I have to like have like all the sweetener, all the regular milk, all that good stuff. But we can kind of dive into our article for today, kind of doing a more generalized article that I think would be fun, kind of like a dietitian reacts to these 5 tips that Insider wrote it. It's like the article's called 5 Weight Loss Tips That Obesity Doctors Say You Should Try Before Taking Medications Like semaglutide. I need to figure out how to pronounce that actually, but it's a diabetes medication that's starting to become popular because they're finding that it might help with helping people lose weight a little bit easier. I think the idea that is that when people are insulin resistant, it's really hard to lose weight. And so some of these medications can kind of give people a little push to be able to lose weight easier, but they have to be doing other things too. But these doctors are saying we need to try some other things first. So let's see what we think about these tips that these doctors are saying. So the first tip is that a sustainable diet is often the first step for healthy weight loss. What is your reaction to that?
yeah, I totally agree. I think that often people will pick up like diet trends or, whatever, and they're just not sustainable. So I think having a truly sustainable diet is like the very first thing that we should attempt to do prior to anything like a medical intervention or anything like that. And a lot of people are like, well, what is a sustainable diet? I think if you like look at a diet and you think to yourself, can I do this when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old? Can I do this for the next 50 years? If the answer is yes, then it's sustainable. If the answer is no, then it is not a sustainable diet.
Right, exactly. Because some people do truly like eating like low carbs. Like I've had some clients, they're like, I just don't really like carby foods. I like fatty foods. I'm like, okay, great. Like maybe low carb diet is sustainable for what you do or your food culture or something like that. And some people I have eat like super high carbs and they both lose weight, but it's really, I think, dependent on what is sustainable for you and your food preferences and things like that. And then that's where I think working with a registered dietitian can come in because we can help you to think through like, yeah, that's what like the way that you want to eat is still going to work. Or like, no, we do need to put some effort in this area to like overall have a calorie deficit. So I feel like I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think a lot of people tend to jump to the gun a little bit when it comes to weight loss not working, but I don't think it's their fault. I think it's just that they kind of fall victim to these like super restrictive diets that like nobody can follow in like today's times.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The second point these doctors make is that exercise is helpful for weight maintenance. It's interesting because like in this little paragraph, they put that they said exercise isn't very effective for significant long-term weight loss. But strength training is because with cardio or like with I guess like any exercise, your body can adapt, but your body has a harder time adapting if you increase the intensity that you're doing with something like resistance training. So what I think they kind of mean, because they just say exercise in general, is the same thing that I kind of talk about with like, we don't want to just continue to do cardio and cardio and cardio. We also want to kind of like change it up, increase metabolism through strength training as well. But how do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And really, there are so many like wonderful benefits of exercise outside of attempting to lose weight. I think even if somebody's not trying to lose weight, I think exercise should be incorporated. There is mental, physical, emotional like benefits to having, a decent amount of exercise. I do agree with the like weight training. I think a lot of people have the idea that I need to like sprint for 5 days a week, an hour a day to be able to lose weight. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the fitness industry is just like the nutrition industry, in that like there's trendy things that unqualified people talk about. And then there's things that actually work that aren't as like sexy, but they work a lot better, but they're not like as like a fancy influencer like selling the program. So it gets like overlooked and then it makes people want to give up if they don't think it works. So again, I think with diet, you have to find something that's going to be sustainable for you in a way that you like to move your body, but also putting in some resistance training there to build more muscle mass. Do you love our realistic approach on nutrition but want to dive a little bit deeper? Let me tell you about the Millennial Living Membership Program. This was designed to help you stay motivated and inspired no matter what health journey you're on. We develop monthly nutrition and fitness challenges with prizes you can win if you stick with it to help motivate you through every month. To inspire you, we upload weekly recipes with downloadable food lists, monthly food demos, and we can even have a registered dietitian answer your questions on nutrition and weight loss. Our members form a community with other like-minded people to help support each other on their health journey. If you are seeking a way to stay motivated throughout your health journey with our method in mind, try signing up for the Millennial Living Membership Program for the first 2 weeks free by signing up on our website at themillennialnutritionist.com. Check your medications. Some can cause weight gain. So this is definitely a little bit out of, I feel like, my scope of understanding, but I need to be like slightly understand why maybe somebody's a little bit more resistant to the weight loss recommendations that I provide. And there are a lot of medications that do impede weight loss. I know a lot of antidepressants do. I think actually, aren't you the one who completed like a project for me on that? Or maybe another intern did.
There are a lot of medications. I think the most frequent that we see on our end are medications like antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. But I know the article mentions a few others also.
Yeah, they also say beta blockers and allergy medications. I think this is something that you might just want to go back to your doctor on. Sometimes, like, I'll have clients who are on a lot of psych medications, and it seems like their psychiatrists are pretty open with being like, oh, yeah, this one is a little bit like there's some research to support that you can gain weight off of it. So maybe there's some wiggle room in trying a different medication that's not going to like completely throw you off the bandwagon of your like psych progress. But I do want to say, like, I don't want like anybody to think that they should just take themselves automatically off all these medications. I think that's like a conversation you should definitely have with your doctor. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I had the same thoughts. I think dietitians are definitely familiar with a lot of the medications. They're definitely able to like work with you in, achieving good health while on the medications, but it is not within our scope of practice to be able to like advise you to switch medications or to get off of the medications. That is not something that anybody should be telling you to do other than your physician. So I think, yeah, maybe at a certain point, if you're unable to achieve your goals, it is a conversation to have with your
Yes. Yeah.
primary
Yeah.
provider.
The next statement that they include is prioritizing sleep can help you reduce appetite and cutting calories. I feel like I agree with this, but I'll let you take it away first. How do you feel about this statement and what it has to do with weight loss?
Yeah, I really liked that was mentioned. I think sleep is super underrated, and we should all get more of it. And I think that's to go for weight loss and just overall well-being. I did a little bit of outside reading and came across a research article from the NIH about how the hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, are impacted by sleep deprivation. So ghrelin is what is often called the hunger hormone.
Mhm.
And when you are sleep deprived, you may see an increase in that hormone, and then your body is going to get more hunger cues, and you're going to feel more hungry. And then leptin is a hormone that helps our body experience feelings of fullness. And then with sleep deprivation, the research article showed that with a decrease in sleep led to a decrease in function for that hormone. And again, you're going to feel more hungry.
Interesting. Okay. So we actually do have the science to back it up. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of
yeah.
people don't really like, a lot of people say like, oh, what do I need to like do this like supplement to decrease appetite, or maybe this like drink, or I need to like, eat a certain macro. And I feel like a lot of like appetite does come down to sleep. I don't think a lot of people realize how many things are really reset during your sleep. But it's just like taken for granted because it's not like super magical or anything.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, even, outside of like, on a hormonal level, like just, if you're getting 5 hours of sleep each night, you're not going to feel up for doing half an hour, 45 minutes of exercise.
No.
You're not going to feel up for spending, a little bit of extra time doing meal prep. You're tired. You're not going to want to do it.
It's all got to work together. The last statement they say is getting tested for underlying conditions that may interfere with weight loss. Oh, that's awesome coming from a physician, because a lot of times at least I hear horror stories about how they don't kind of like think about these things. So when we think of this, we think of things, or they include like Cushing syndrome or hypothyroidism, other metabolic disorders. It could be something like PCOS, and treating those conditions, and looking at maybe like some remedies for those conditions too. But they do make sure to include that it's not entirely going to resolve the weight gain, but it can kind of give a little bit of extra edge, which I feel like I'm learning about weight loss over time is it's just like a ton of little interventions that add up. It's never like this one thing that's wrong. It's probably like a bunch of little things. But what's your 2 cents on that statement?
Yeah, I'll go out on a limb and say that if you are like suddenly gaining weight or if you're just really having trouble losing weight, that getting lab work done is probably one of the first things
Hmm.
that you should do.
Yes.
There are a lot of things that if they are not corrected by a physician, then there are limited things that we can do on our end. I had a client just last week who she about a year ago gained a whole bunch of weight and she really just could not pinpoint what it was. So one of the things we're going to do, depending on how the next couple of weeks go, is if we don't see a lot of changes over the next couple of weeks, she's going to go in and get lab work done.
Mm.
With women, especially, there are so many thyroid issues. They really are so prevalent, and thyroid issues, whether it's hyper or hypothyroidism, can really impact your ability to gain and lose weight. So those, again, dietitians cannot prescribe medications
Hmm.
for that. So that is something that your primary care provider has to be able to identify.
Yes, yes. If anybody ever tells me, like, in their intake session that, like, all of a sudden they gained, like, 30 pounds in 2 months, it's, like, really hard to do that unless, yeah, maybe, like, you broke your leg and are bend bound, and then you also decided to eat, like, 5,000 calories a day.
Yeah,
Like, it's hard to do that without something being wrong. It's a lot of times I think we, or I start to think that something like that could be like that because understanding how metabolism works, like something's got to change there for your body to automatically like gain all this extra weight so fast because it really shouldn't happen that quickly.
right.
All right, so hopping into our carbohydrate segment here, let's kind of like set the groundwork before we hop into some tips on how you can improve, I guess, your intake of carbohydrates and increasing the healthy ones and maybe decreasing the ones that aren't as nutrient dense. Define like what are carbs? Can you give any examples if somebody does not even know what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So carbohydrates are one of three macronutrients that our body uses on a daily basis,
Mhm.
all of which are important. But carbohydrates are the body's preferred source of energy. So when we consume carbohydrates, our body immediately begins metabolizing them and converting them to usable energy, which is how we get through on a daily basis. It's how we like get up and start moving around each morning. It's how we start our exercises. It's what our brain uses to function on a daily basis. With that said, carbohydrates do give us quick energy. So we'll go through that pretty quickly. So that's where the other macronutrients, protein and fat, might come into play to kind of maintain that energy that carbohydrates are giving us and to
Mhm.
prolong it. We have simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates might be something like white bread or white rice. There are like sugar sweetened drinks, a lot of the desserts that we liked. And those are also low fiber carbohydrates, which we'll circle back to. And then complex carbohydrates are things that are like whole grains, like oatmeal, whole grain breads, whole grain crackers. And those carbohydrates are higher in fiber.
Carbs, I mean, our body needs it so much that they can even like convert other like other macros into like a way to use carbs in the body. Your brain needs some, what is it, something like 70% of the carbs you consume
Yeah,
to
yeah.
survive.
hmm
So it's super,
And
super. Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just going back to what you said. Like our bodies, despite some of the diets that are trending right now to eliminate them, our body does need carbohydrates so badly that we are able to convert like a portion of protein and a portion of fat to carbohydrates. They are in smaller quantities, which again is
Mhm.
why the carb source itself is ideal. But that is how badly that our body wants to use that.
Yes. Yes. What about why should somebody who is trying to lose weight care about carbohydrates? Like, where does that play in, do you think?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it goes back to fiber. Carbohydrates
Mhm.
provide us with a lot of fiber, and fiber is what's going to help us feel full and
Mhm.
satisfied and less likely to overeat. There's also just a like satisfaction like area of that. When we eat food, if we're just eating like a salad with grilled chicken, we're going to be satisfied maybe for a little bit, but not for an extended period of time. Versus if we add like, a high fiber carbohydrate to that, it's going to carry us over longer. We are going to feel better about the meal. We are going to feel more satisfied, and our body's going to feel more satisfied. So, again, that'll help eliminate the overeating later.
Yeah, whenever I have clients that start, a lot of times they think that like anytime they lose weight, they've just got to eat as little as possible. So they like kind of like when they start, definitely start well strong, what they think is strong by like only eating like produce and protein. And then they have all these meals that are only like 200 calories because produce is not a lot of calories. And when you eat a little bit of protein with not a lot on it, it's not a lot of calories either. And then they just don't know. I'm like, we got to be eating more. This is why you're overeating on the weekend. This is why you're overeating at like 8 or 9 on chocolate cake. And then they're like, I just don't know what to add to this. And it's like, we forget about that carbs are really there to kind of like fill us up so that we don't overeat on higher calorie foods later
Right.
on. So I definitely agree with that. And then, so what happens if we don't eat enough? I think even like specifically thinking about like weight loss, like what's going to happen if somebody doesn't try to figure out how to eat them healthfully?
Yeah, so I think again, there's a few aspects to this too. I think when people cut out carbohydrates, well, not even I think, like if you cut out carbohydrates significantly enough, you're going to feel fatigued. And
Mhm.
again, that goes back to our body needs the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates convert to glucose, and that's what our body uses to function. And if we don't have that, we are going to feel tired and we're going to feel fatigued.
Mhm.
Again, satisfaction is also but that's also an important thing to mention. And then when we hear people having like intense food cravings, it's probably because they're restrictively like they're being restrictive with their carbohydrates,
Yeah.
and that's going to lead to greater cravings. Just like you said, it's going to lead to overeating, whether it's in the evenings or on the weekends, or you restrict heavily for a couple of days, and then finally day 3, day 4, you are just so starving, and you overeat.
A lot of times on like social media, I'm always talking about like eating more for weight loss. And I think that's really counterintuitive for a lot of people. And they always ask, like, what does that mean? And this is a prime example of that. Like, not really eating more overall, but like eating more in the foods that are keeping you full, and carbohydrates that are high in fiber, are really going to help you do that. So you do get a higher volume of food if you can kind of maximize on that. And then it can make you feel like you're eating more, but you're ultimately eating less calories overall. But
Right.
great.
I think people just get confused because of all of the diet trends that are out there. So many of which cut out carbohydrates, or they heavily restrict carbohydrates. But I would like to say that I think it's more the quality of carbohydrates
Mhm.
rather than the quantities. So I think you can keep your carbohydrates. I think you just need to make mindful decisions about which carbohydrates you're consuming.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of like lead into that.
Yeah.
So let's give some tips on how people can do what you just said, like mindfully consume them. I always hate to use the words like good or bad, but that a lot of people do ask like, so what are the bad ones, or what are good carbohydrates? And so I think when people use those words, I feel like what they're meaning, and you can tell me if you think differently, like high fiber carbs that are filling you up, so that you don't overeat later on. Because if you eat a low fiber carbs, it's something like a white piece of bread or something like batter on a fried piece of shrimp, that's pretty much just like white flour. There's not a lot bound to it that's going to keep you full. So it's not necessarily going to be like higher or lower in calories, but you get a lot more bang for your buck. And so that can kind of be like how you would like differentiate between what other people say are bad carbs versus good carbs. I like to say just like high fiber versus low fiber. Do you feel like that's what they mean, or is there
Yeah,
anything
I
missing?
do, but I don't like that
Yeah.
terminology either. Your low fiber carbohydrates aren't necessarily bad. I mean, they're in some of our like favorite foods, like our favorite desserts and pizzas,
Yeah.
and, pastas and stuff like that. And it's totally fine to eat some of those things, but that might not be what we want to fill up with super
Right.
frequently.
Yeah.
So that might be like a sometimes food, or, like a night out, like a dessert type food. It's not going to be something we want to have at every single meal just because it is low fiber and it's not going to super fill us up.
Right, yeah, and at the end of the day, you need calories, and you get calories from even the low fiber carbs, so, yeah, that's definitely why
Right,
it's
right,
not bad.
right.
Okay, well, take it away. What is your first tip to either, like, increase maybe, like higher fiber or carbs that are helpful with weight loss, or, like, decreasing carbs that aren't gonna help with weight loss as much?
Yeah, so I made note of 2 ways to decrease and 2 ways to add. Do you want me to just start at the top, or do you wanna do one at a time?
You do one and I'll do one, like, go
Yeah,
back and
that
forth.
sounds great. So for decreasing, I am really not one that generally wants to like cut out things or restrict
Mhm,
things unless it's like medically necessary.
mhm,
But with that said, if you're drinking sugar sweetened beverages, I would really try to cut those
yeah,
out. So things like sweet teas and sodas. And the reason is they're really high in calories, they're really high in sugar, so they're high, which means they're high in carbohydrates, and they're not really providing us with any other nutrition.
Mhm.
So, maybe you're eating a cookie, maybe there might be like little bits of other things in there, but in like stuff like soft drinks, there's really not much else in there.
Mhm.
So a really easy way to, cut down on the low fiber carbohydrates is to eliminate the sugar sweet drinks.
Yeah, I agree. I think where I see this a lot with clients is like, because I don't get a lot of clients that drink soda. I feel like as Americans, we have come a long way, at least with the population I feel like we work with. I don't have a lot of people that drink tons of soda anymore or like fruit juice, but I see it a lot in like Starbucks drinks. Starbucks is like a little
Oh
tricky
yeah.
where I don't know, sometimes we think because it's a little bit higher scale that it's like healthy or something, but there's a lot of sugar in those drinks. And then also alcohol. So my clients
Mhm.
sometimes that drink like, will like have like these crazy like 3,000 or like 3,500 calorie days. It's hard to eat that much volume, but it's easy if you're just drinking like higher calorie alcohol drinks. And so that's typically where I see that. And then that's why it can be harder to lose weight when you're in, because those foods don't fill you up. Like you still want to eat
Right.
after you've had like 3 margaritas with like tons
Right.
of sugar in it. And so it's just not getting the best bang for your buck if you're trying to lose weight. Do you feel like you see that too? Or like,
Yeah, no, those Starbucks, I didn't even think about that. Those Starbucks drinks really do like add up. You get the what is it, a venti, the large like frappuccino, and like,
yeah,
there's like 18 pumps of syrup, a ton of whipped cream. And it's super high in calories.
yeah,
And it's not, I mean, I know it might be giving you a caffeine boost, but really the
right.
boost you're feeling is probably from sugar, and then you're just gonna
Exactly.
crash back down.
Yeah, and then you're still hungry because it's not gonna fill you up
Yeah,
enough for
you're
breakfast
hungry,
typically.
you're tired. Yeah.
Yeah. I think kind of going off of that, I thought one would be, yeah, also to kind of like maybe decreasing carbs that aren't filling, or just being aware of what carbs are. I find that so many people just don't know what carbs even are. Like, I think a lot of us know that like rice and bread, but then we don't think of like other things like batter on fried foods, also like chips, fruit. Not saying we need to decrease these things, but being aware of like how your plate is going to add up on calories and just being overall aware of like what are carbs in general, sugary drinks, because then once you know like what foods carbs are, you can start to make a plan from there so that when you go out to eat and you're trying to follow the my plate model, it's really hard to do that if you don't even know what carbs are. And then you're like, I don't understand why this meal is so high in calories. And as a dietitian, I can look and be like, oh, it's because you had like 4 servings of carbs in the one plate. Like that makes sense as opposed to like having like half a plate of produce. And so kind of like a tip there I have is maybe just like educating yourself about like what foods carbs are. Listen back to Hannah's definition because you gave a really succinct definition of it. But again, it's mostly like going to be like grainy foods like rice or like bread or fruit or sugar, just so that you can make sure, again, like you're filling up on lower calorie foods as opposed to like not understanding why your meal is suddenly 1,000 calories when you've like gone to eat Tex-Mex and had like a like strawberry margarita and then also like chips and dip and then enchiladas and then also like rice and beans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You feel like you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, especially I know you live in Texas and I'm currently in Texas, and that meal is like the best example, right?
Yeah.
Because every single thing you mentioned is like a common meal that,
Yeah.
people have, especially if you're in Texas, and it is primarily carbohydrates.
Right. And so again, it's not bad, but it's just like if you're trying to lose weight and feel full, then you can try to maximize by swapping some of that stuff out for like a salad or something instead that's going to be a higher volume and less calories. What is another tip you have?
So I think swapping for high fiber carbs is
Mhm.
a really like easy way to just make a swap without like cutting something out. So that can be done by switching from white bread to whole wheat bread, or from Ritz crackers to a multigrain cracker. And the same thing can be said for cereals, pastas, rice, and stuff like that. So that's an easy way to get a more high fiber carbohydrate while also get your carbohydrates in, and kind of still feel satisfied with your food choice.
I at least run into this problem with some clients is like they get confused because it's not like there's a huge calorie difference in like higher fiber options versus like white rice versus brown rice. I believe that even the brown rice is like a little bit higher in calories maybe or something. But it's just going to make you feel so full and I feel like I trying to come up with like analogy. Maybe you have a better one. The best one I can always think of is like investing in something. It's like, would you rather like spend money on something that you know is like a really good deal that you're going to get a lot of work, like a lot of use out of, or would you rather spend the same amount of money on something that's like kind of like broken down and you're only going to be able to like use it for like a day or two? Because that's the same as like you're spending the same amount of calories on these different carbs, but a whole grain version or like a high fiber version is just going to go so much longer for like the money you spent
Right.
or the calories you ate. Do you feel like that's a good
Yeah,
analogy?
I like that analogy.
Okay.
I wouldn't have come up with a better one, really. I think that's a good one, though. Like, what am I going to get out? These are the same price, but what am I going to get out of this versus what I'm going to
Right.
get out of this? And then you're going to make from there. You're going to make the smarter decision.
Yeah, and you can kind of see how you feel too, like making those swaps, because it can be as easy as just like a lot of my clients love like day killer bread or like swapping out like so like white toast for whole grain toast, or even like brown rice for white rice. Some people don't love brown rice. I'm not like on a brown rice kick either, but even like finding like really fun ancient grains like quinoa was one that was really popular recently, and farro and stuff like that all has a lot of fiber to keep you full. I think kind of going off of that, I thought a fun way to add something in is like pasta into salads. I think when we think of salads, a lot of people get stuck in the very low calorie zone because they only think of like lettuce and maybe chicken and some sort of very low calorie vinaigrette. And then they don't understand why they're hungry a couple hours later. And then, of course, they want to give up because being healthy is so hard. So, one way to stay full is adding carbohydrates to salad. And I think this is where like those ancient grains can come in. So, there's a lot of fun, like, yeah, quinoa salads or like putting and like using lettuce, but still adding in like farro or even like lentils is like a carbohydrate. And so adding that in, and that can make the salad a lot more filling overall. Or even just like looking up a lot of Mediterranean recipes. I love going into like those more like Greek restaurants where they'll have like a ton of like mixture foods, or like Middle Eastern restaurants where they have like a lot of mixture salads, because I feel like they do a good job with like adding carbohydrates with vegetables all in one. Do you ever like do that to your own salads or anything?
Yeah, I actually have the same thing on my list.
Oh.
Ancient grains are so good to add to your like farro, barley, quinoa.
Mhm,
They can all be like sprinkled on top of your salad. Beans, I know you
mhm.
mentioned lentils. Beans are also like pretty starchy, and you can put like some garbanzo beans or black beans on a salad. And I also like to add fruit to my salad.
Mm.
I love like dicing an apple or like throwing blueberries or strawberries, especially in the summer. It's so good. Yeah, so that was one of them. And then, if you're already making I know a lot of people will do like protein shakes in the morning for breakfast.
Mhm.
So you could easily turn that protein shake into a smoothie and throw a banana in there.
Yes, yes. Again, all of those are just adding, I think, like ways to bulk up your food so you're not hungry later on. I think one food that gets like a bad rap are like pasta salads, like the old school with like the rotini. Like, I don't know, when I was a kid, my mom would make it with like it was like when all the box foods came out and then you just like had Italian dressing with like
Yes.
the dried up olives. That was it. But there's a lot of fun recipes, and I love doing that in summer too, especially in Texas because it's so freaking hot. But like you could just balance out the vegetables in it a lot better. And that's like another good example of like an out of the box like type of salad where you could still have pasta in there. I think it's still a lot more filling, a lot more tasty, but then like add a ton of like cucumbers, tomatoes, arugula, all that stuff can make it fun in a very balanced way to add in carbohydrates. Since I took yours, I can do another one. So this would be a tip on like how to reduce overeating on carbohydrates. So I think just filling up on produce first. I see this again a lot with people who go out to eat, and it's super overwhelming because there's typically a lot of super tasty carbohydrates at restaurants. Remember that carbohydrates are some of the cheapest foods like rice, flour. And so that's why restaurants put so much on your plate, because it's a good way to just make it seem like you're eating a lot more for your money. And if you don't go into eating out with a plan, all that stuff can kind of trap you in. And then you might accidentally have like this 1,000 calorie meal without trying. And then you're so frustrated. But I understand that it's hard when you get into a restaurant to not like get overwhelmed by all the people you're with, or like not know like what to eat first if the calories on the menu. So what I try to tell my clients over and over again is just try to fill up on produce first. Like if you can get an appetizer, Brussels sprouts are like having a moment, like try to do something like that. Try to even like an appetizer salad that you can split. Salads, I think, are always funner when you go out to eat, and then work on your carbs and protein after. But that can help you again avoid that like huge Tex-Mex situation. Do you ever like have a method when you go out to eat to like, or like some go-to vegetable options?
I love getting a salad out to eat, and I'm not one of those people that eat salads like all the time, but I feel like a salad is so much better, like, when I'm not the one making it, like,
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's so much more fun when you
Mhm.
go out to eat because 'cause they're putting just like, the salad at the cafe I've been going to, they put candied walnuts on it. Like, I'm not making candy walnuts at my house. Like, it's just not something I'm gonna do.
Right, right.
I also don't even know where to buy pecorino cheese, so I'm not gonna have that either. And I'm certainly not gonna take the time to, like, make a homemade vinaigrette and, like, massage my kale for 15
Yeah.
minutes. So I do typically, like, go for salads when I eat out, just because it is, like, a high veg option. I think salads are a really easy way to get veggies, and I just think salads at restaurants are so much better than the salads at my house.
Yes, yeah, I agree totally. Because they like all the little ingredients. I feel like you need a restaurant to like make that much time into doing
Yeah.
it. That's what makes them good when you have all those like sun-dried this and like roasted this and candied this. Yeah, you're totally right.
And I do try to keep, like, my plate method, like, in my
Mhm.
mind when I go to eat. So, like, if I go like, that salad that I mentioned doesn't normally come with protein. I usually add
Mm,
chicken to it, and so I try to, like, walk into the into restaurants with kind of, like, a visual in my head, like, what's gonna be my veggie, what's gonna be my protein, and what's going to be my carb, and how can I kind of, like, enable that. And you can usually like add things to menu or to menu items at restaurants, and you can usually eliminate things so you can kind of like play around with it.
yeah, I think that's easy. Restaurants are so hard for so many reasons, but I think that's a great tip.
My last one was just that if you're already eating a carb, to maybe pair it with like a protein,
Yeah.
whether it's like a cheese or a handful of trail mix or beef jerky or something. And that way you're going to fill up a little bit on that protein and maybe reach for less of the carbohydrates. If you're at a restaurant, you could easily like add a protein to a meal. Almost every single restaurant, like there's a little section, and for an extra couple of dollars, they'll let you add like I don't know, like shrimp or fish
Yeah.
or chicken or something like that. And so you can kind of like play with the menu. I also like when I go to smoothie places, you can usually pay like a dollar extra to add like protein powder to the smoothies. So I'll usually do that. And that way, like, you are paying a little bit more, but I mean, if you're already going to a restaurant, you're kind of going to be expecting to, pay for the things that you're eating. But that way it's a little bit like more balanced. You're getting all the things that you need throughout the day, and then you're meeting your protein goal. And again, you're not going to fill up as much on the carbs. So if you got like a pasta, when you went out to a restaurant, or if you're making pasta at home, if you add like a chicken to it, you're probably not going to eat as much of the pasta.
Yep.
You're going to get enough of it, but you're not going to fill up on that because you'll have that protein too.
Yeah, and again, just because it'll keep you fuller for longer, like the protein's gonna last you longer. I had a client recently which I didn't realize this was a problem with a lot of therapists, that it's just session after session after session all day, right? And so she really struggled to like mentally have the energy to get through. So we've been kind of trying to optimize her snacking situation, where she tried to like just do carbs for a while, but then like she's like, my energy's gone after one session. As a dietitian, I'm like, yes, because that's how like carbs only really last for an hour. And then she was like, I'm just gonna do protein. But then like she didn't have much energy until like a couple hours later. So we worked on really combining them to maybe do like a cheese stick and crackers, because there's different functions of macros. And so the carbs really help with the short term, but then the long term with the cheese stick is going to help her like kind of last all the sessions. So I think that's like another example of kind of what we're talking about, like not like if you only do carbs, it's just going to really run out really quickly. And I see that again a lot with snacking, like this, like a lot of people are like, I just overeat on a lot of like super carby foods. And it's likely because we're not also adding in a protein to the snacking.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you're grabbing like a handful of goldfish or a bag of pretzels or something like that, it's not going to fill you up.
Mhm.
It's not going to fill you up. I mean, you might not be hungry for about 20 minutes, but after that, you're going to be hungry again. Versus if you added a protein or fat to it, maybe you have a couple hours with it.
The last tip that I have is how to eat more of something, and it would be fruit. So fruit is a carbohydrate. And sometimes I don't see people eat enough because they don't prep it. This goes with like probably anything. But trying to prep some on the weekends, or even like if you want to spend a little bit more money and buy it pre-cut or something like that, is a really great way to add more carbs to your meal. A lot of times I'm having to work with clients to also increase calories at breakfast, because we tend to really skimp on the calories there. And this is a big reason why I see people getting so hungry late in the day, because they're only eating these like 200 calorie breakfasts. Like you're saying, like just a protein shake really isn't going to cut it for most people. people to be full all day. And so making sure to add a fruit there. But that the step starts with like actually having it prepped. A banana is a great option because it's like all you have to do is peel it. But if you're doing something like berries, maybe going ahead and cutting them like the morning before, or like buying them cut, or like watermelon, like you're not going to eat it if it's like sitting on the counter and you've got to go to work like right away. Like going ahead and putting the time towards like actually prepping it, having it cut. And fruit is a great high fiber food that's going to fill you up. For some reason, fruit is like the demon of all of these like fad diets, but fruit is great. I think everybody should eat more fruit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I caught onto a habit that I was a really bad habit that I was getting into, and it was buying mangoes and then literally letting them rot in my fridge.
Yes.
And the reason is because you have to like peel them and cut them and prepare
Yes.
them. And so like what I started doing is I'll buy them and then I'll just leave them on the counter so they'll ripen right away. And as soon as they ripen, I peel them all, I cut them all, and I put them all in a container.
Mm-hmm.
Another way I like to do it is I always try to keep like some frozen fruit in the freezer, like bags of blueberries or strawberries or whatever. That way, I mean, it's already washed, it's already there. It's the stems are removed, and you can just pour it into the smoothie, or I'll pour blueberries on top of my oatmeal. So that's another way I like to do that.
Great. Yeah. And definitely adding in fruit is going to make you feel full. It is not just straight sugar. It is definitely different than just a tablespoon of sugar. It has a lot more to it, a lot more fiber. But great. So those were our tips to kind of help you maybe navigate eating carbs healthfully a little bit more, a little bit going to help you to lose weight if you're strategic about which carbs you eat. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting a lot more content out there. You can watch the podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Apple. If you could also consider leaving us a review. I checked the other day and we have a couple of nice comments and reviews, which I didn't even know were on there. So keep those up so we can continue to spread the good word about science-based nutrition. But thank you so much for joining us today, Hannah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Millennial Nutritionist podcast. For daily weight loss tips and nutrition information, you can find us on Instagram at the.millennial.nutritionist and on TikTok at millennial.nutritionist. If you find this information helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend who needs encouragement on their health journey. See you in the next episode.